Good morning, America. As we look back on the first days of February, it's hard to forget the bone-chilling cold that swept across so much of the country. Early February brought a winter punch that truly tested our endurance, especially for those living in the Midwest and Northeast. For days, relentless snow and biting winds transformed neighborhoods into frozen landscapes, making even the most routine tasks feel like a challenge. Wind chills in the upper Midwest were so severe that even a quick trip to the mailbox felt like an Arctic expedition. People bundled up in layers, bracing themselves against gusts that seemed to cut right through winter coats and scarves. Cities like Chicago and Minneapolis barely reached single digits, with daytime highs struggling to climb above zero. Meanwhile, Boston and New York faced their coldest air of the season, as icy winds whipped through city streets and left sidewalks slick and treacherous. The deep freeze disrupted daily life in countless ways. School delays and cancellations became the norm, as buses struggled to navigate snow-packed roads. Workers raced to repair frozen pipes, and families spent hours shoveling driveways and sidewalks, all while trying to stay warm. This wasn't just a typical winter chill. A massive Arctic air mass plunged far to the south, creating those beautiful but brutal winter scenes. Snow-blanketed fields and forests, while lakes and rivers froze solid, turning the landscape into a winter wonderland that was as dangerous as it was picturesque. The culprit behind this deep freeze, a classic winter pattern that allowed the polar vortex's frigid air to escape its usual confines. The jet stream dipped dramatically, funneling cold air straight from the Arctic into the heart of the United States, while the cold looked stunning from the comfort of our homes. Frosty windows, snowflakes swirling in the air. It was a different story outside. Pedestrians braved the harsh wind, faces hidden behind scarves, as everyone dreamed of the return of warmth and sunshine. Local news stations were filled with stories of communities coming together, neighbors helping each other clear snow, and tips for staying safe in the extreme cold. For many, it was a reminder of the resilience and spirit that shines brightest in tough times. Now, as we look ahead, a major pattern change is on the horizon. Meteorologists are tracking a real atmospheric flip, a shift that promises to bring relief from the relentless cold and a taste of the milder days to come. We're about to experience what meteorologists call a thaw. Temperatures will rise, ice and snow will begin to melt, and the first hints of spring will start to peek through the winter blanket. For many, it will feel like a whole new season arriving overnight. But before we welcome the warmth, let's take a moment to understand why we were so cold, and what's changing above us. The atmosphere is a complex system, and these dramatic swings are all part of the story. It all comes down to the powerful force known as the polar vortex, a swirling mass of cold air high above the Arctic that, when disrupted, can send waves of frigid air southward. This time, it reminded us just how powerful and unpredictable winter can be. So, what exactly is the polar vortex, and why does it matter so much for our winter weather? The polar vortex is one of the most powerful forces in our atmosphere, shaping the way cold air moves across the northern hemisphere. It's a term you might hear often in winter forecasts, but it's more than just a buzzword. It's a key player in the drama of winter. The polar vortex is a swirling mass of frigid, dense air that sits high above the North Pole, spinning counterclockwise like a giant icy hurricane. This pool of cold air is trapped in the stratosphere, thousands of feet above the surface, and it acts as a reservoir for some of the coldest temperatures on Earth. Normally, this icy air is kept locked in place by a powerful river of wind called the jet stream. The jet stream acts like a fence, circling the polar vortex and keeping its coldest air bottled up near the pole. But sometimes, the jet stream weakens or becomes wavy, and that's when things get interesting. When this happens, the polar vortex can wobble or even split, sending frigid air spilling southward into areas that are usually much milder. That's exactly what happened in early February, when a sudden disruption in the jet stream allowed a lobe of Arctic air to break free, unleashing a deep freeze across the central and eastern United States. Cities from Chicago to New York found themselves in the grip of record-breaking cold, with icy streets and snow piling up. It's important to note that the polar vortex itself didn't move directly over us. Instead, its weakened state allowed its coldest air to escape, pouring southward and transforming our weather almost overnight. This kind of disruption is behind some of the most extreme winter cold snaps we experience. When the polar vortex is disturbed, it can send temperatures plummeting, forcing people to bundle up and cities to brace for dangerous conditions. That's why meteorologists keep a close eye on the strength and position of the polar vortex all winter long. It's the ultimate gatekeeper of Arctic air, and its behavior can mean the difference between a mild winter and a brutal one. Over the years, scientists have learned to track the polar vortex using satellites, weather balloons, and computer models. By studying its patterns, they can often predict when a cold outbreak might be on the way, giving us time to prepare. The good news is that these patterns are always shifting. The polar vortex doesn't stay weak forever. It can regain its strength, tightening up and pulling its cold air back toward the pole. As the vortex regains strength, the jet stream straightens out, and the cold retreats, signaling a major change in our weather. This is often the first sign that a thaw is on the horizon. That's exactly what our latest forecasts are showing, a reorganizing atmosphere, with the polar vortex tightening up and a warming trend ready to sweep in for February. So, get ready for a big shift. As the polar vortex strengthens and the jet stream recovers, the deep freeze will give way to milder days, and winter's icy grip will finally start to loosen. The big warm-up is coming, and it's not just a fluke or a lucky break in the weather. There's a fascinating science behind why our temperatures are about to take a dramatic turn. If you've been shivering through the past few weeks, you're not alone. Much of the country has been locked in a deep freeze. But now, the stage is set for a major shift, and it all starts high above the Earth. The reason? The polar vortex is tightening up again. This swirling mass of cold air, which usually sits over the Arctic, sometimes weakens and lets frigid air spill south. But now, it's regaining its strength. As it strengthens, it locks the cold air back over the Arctic, almost like closing the freezer door on the planet. When that door is shut tight, the bitter cold stays put, and the rest of us get a break from the chill. This shift also changes the jet stream, which acts like a giant conveyor belt for weather. Instead of plunging deep into the US and dragging Arctic air with it, the jet stream flattens out, flowing more west to east. This subtle change has a huge impact on what we feel at ground level. With the jet stream no longer acting as a pipeline for Arctic air, that supply is cut off. In its place, milder Pacific air is allowed to sweep across the country, bringing a noticeable change in temperature and even the way the air feels. Pacific air, warmed by the vast expanse of ocean waters, is much less cold than Arctic air. It carries moisture and a gentler touch, often bringing clouds, fog, and a sense of relief after weeks of biting cold. As this new pattern takes hold, the US will feel a dramatic shift. Frigid air out, milder air in. Streets that were once icy and snow-packed will quickly turn to slush and puddles. People will swap out their heavy winter gear for lighter layers, and the landscape will start to look and feel more like spring. It's a perfect example of how a change high above the North Pole can quickly alter our weather thousands of miles away. The atmosphere is a connected system, and what happens in one region can set off a chain reaction that affects us all. Over the next several days, this chain reaction will bring a dramatic and welcome warm-up. You'll notice the snow melting, the air softening, and maybe even the first hints of green returning to your yard. It's a transformation that happens fast, and it's all thanks to the powerful forces at work above us. So, as we prepare for the thaw, remember, it's all thanks to the polar vortex regaining strength and the jet stream shifting. Meteorologists track these patterns closely, because they're the key to understanding why our weather can change so quickly and dramatically. Warmer days are just ahead, so get ready to enjoy the sunshine, the fresh air, and the first signs of a new season. The science behind the change is complex, but the result is simple: relief from the cold, and a chance to welcome spring. What will this change feel like? Expect a major temperature rebound, 10, 20, even 30 degrees warmer than last week. In the upper Midwest, highs will jump from single digits to the 30s or even 40s. The Northeast will see highs leap from the 20s to the 40s, maybe even 50s. It'll feel more like early March than February, and people will be tempted to shed their heavy coats. This warm-up is thanks to milder Pacific air replacing the Arctic chill. Even average temperatures will feel mild after the deep freeze. The strengthening sun will help melt snow and add to the sense of a thaw. Get ready to enjoy a much-needed break from winter's harshest stretch. The thaw brings its own challenges, mainly the cycle of melting by day and refreezing by night. As temperatures rise above freezing, snow and ice will melt, creating puddles and slush. But at night, as temperatures drop, all that water will freeze again, creating black ice. Morning commutes could be treacherous with hidden ice on roads and sidewalks. Treat walkways with salt or sand before bed, and drive cautiously, especially on bridges and overpasses. This melt and refreeze cycle will repeat for several days, so stay alert. The thaw brings a different kind of hazard, not wind chill, but sneaky, slippery ice. Adjust your habits to stay safe during this tricky transition. Enjoy the daytime warmth, but don't let your guard down at night. A little caution will help everyone enjoy the warm-up safely. Not everyone will feel the thaw the same way. Regional differences matter. In the Midwest and Northeast, deep snow cover and frozen ground will slow the warming. Much of the sun's energy will go into melting snow, not heating the air. The Great Lakes, still icy, act like giant refrigerators, keeping nearby areas cooler. So, while temperatures will rise, the process will be slower where snow and ice linger. Farther south and west, where there's little snow, the sun can warm the ground and air more quickly. Cities like St. Louis or Nashville could see spring-like temperatures much faster than Minneapolis or Buffalo. The snowpack is the great equalizer, moderating the pace of the thaw. This regional variation is classic late winter weather, a tale of two thaws. Local conditions shape how quickly you'll feel the warmth. Even with the warming trend, winter isn't over yet. Transitional patterns often bring active weather, as milder air clashes with lingering cold. The boundary between air masses can spark storms, so keep those shovels handy. The new jet stream pattern will carry multiple systems across the country. These storms may bring a messy mixed snow, sleet, freezing rain, or just rain depending on local temperatures. Mixed bag storms are tricky to forecast and can be disruptive. Stay updated on your local forecast and be prepared for more winter weather. This thaw is a break, not the end, so stay vigilant. How long will the thaw last? Forecasts suggest 1 to 2 weeks of milder weather, taking us through mid-February. This stretch will shrink the snowpack and give us a break from the extreme cold, but it may be temporary. Long-range models hint the polar vortex could weaken again, later in the month. If that happens, another blast of Arctic air could return before winter ends. February is known for big temperature swings, so don't get too comfortable. Enjoy the mild spell, but keep winter gear handy. We'll know more as mid-February approaches, but a return to cold is possible. In weather, change is always just around the corner. Some worry a rapid thaw could cause flooding, but this time, the risk is low. Unlike past events like the 1996 Northeast floods, this warm-up will be gradual and rain-free. Sunshine and milder air will melt snow slowly, allowing water to soak in or run off safely. The lack of heavy rain means rivers are less likely to flood or jam with ice. Minor rises in streams are possible, but widespread flooding isn't expected. This is the best-case scenario for a winter thaw relief without major hazards. By learning from past events, we can better prepare and stay safe. Enjoy the thaw, America.